In the dimly lit basement of the Internet Archive's San Francisco headquarters, the hum of servers was a constant, reassuring presence. The room, packed with rows of towering data racks, felt like a cathedral of technology, a place where the digital past was preserved with the utmost care. The flicker of fluorescent lights cast long shadows on the walls, and the air was cool, carrying the faint scent of electronics and metal. Samantha Turner, the lead systems administrator, was working late. Her shift had extended well past her usual hours, as she was knee-deep in a routine maintenance check. Her computer screen was a blur of code and system diagnostics, a landscape she navigated with practiced ease. It was a typical night until the anomaly appeared. A warning message flashed on her screen. Unusual activity detected in Archive Delta. Samantha frowned. Archive Delta was a critical node, housing a vast repository of digitized books, films, and records. Any irregular activity was alarming, but she had seen false alarms before. She navigated to the monitoring console, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she initiated a deeper scan. The numbers and graphs told a story she didn't like. Traffic spikes, erratic data streams, something was wrong. Her heart rate quickened, but she forced herself to stay calm. She had to follow protocol. Minutes turned into hours as Samantha delved into the issue. The anomaly was subtle but persistent. As she sifted through the logs, she noticed an unfamiliar IP address accessing Archive Delta's database at irregular intervals. It didn't match any known patterns of usage. Samantha's thoughts raced. Was it an internal error, a system malfunction, or something more sinister? She decided to escalate the issue to her supervisor, Jonathan Hale, who had more experience with high-level breaches. She sent an urgent message to Jonathan, detailing the anomaly and her findings. Her fingers trembled slightly as she hit send, her mind already spinning with worst-case scenarios. Jonathan's response came quickly. "On my way, stay alert and keep monitoring." As Samantha waited, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. The Internet Archive was more than just a repository of data. It was a cultural monument, a digital library preserving humanity's collective memory. The thought of it being compromised was unsettling. The room seemed to grow colder, and Samantha pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders. She glanced at the server racks, their blinking lights casting an eerie glow. The usual hum of the servers now seemed to carry a dissonant edge, as if they were whispering secrets she wasn't meant to hear. Jonathan arrived with a sense of urgency that matched Samantha's own. He was a tall man with graying hair and a serious demeanor, the kind of person who took every threat seriously. He wasted no time, diving into the diagnostics and quickly zeroing in on the suspicious IP address. "Have you noticed any changes in the data?" Jonathan asked, his voice low and tense. Samantha shook her head. "Not yet. But the access patterns are irregular. I'm worried that whoever is behind this could be manipulating the data, or worse." Jonathan nodded, his expression grim. "We need to secure this node immediately and trace the source of the breach. If they're inside, they could already be downloading or altering data." Together, they initiated a lockdown on Archive Delta, severing external connections and isolating the node. The process was swift but complicated, involving a series of commands and manual overrides. Samantha's eyes were glued to the screen as Jonathan issued commands, the flicker of the terminal lights reflecting off their anxious faces. The lockdown seemed to stabilize the situation, but the sense of dread remained. Samantha could feel it gnawing at the edges of her thoughts. The Internet Archive was a place of safety and preservation, but now it felt like a vulnerable fortress under siege. As the immediate threat appeared to be contained, Jonathan suggested they start a comprehensive audit of the system logs. It was a painstaking process, but they needed to understand the full extent of the breach. Hours passed, and the once bustling office had quieted down, the only sounds now the rhythmic tapping of keyboards and the occasional murmur of concern. Samantha and Jonathan were deep in their work when Samantha noticed something strange. One of the archived files had been accessed and altered. The file was an old, digitized manuscript, a work from the early 20th century that had been carefully preserved. The changes were subtle but unmistakable. Sentences had been rearranged, and a section of text was missing. Jonathan's face grew pale as he reviewed the file. This isn't just data theft. They're tampering with our archives. The gravity of the situation hit Samantha hard. The integrity of the Internet Archive's collections was at risk. If someone could alter historical documents, there was no telling how far the breach could go. Jonathan turned to Samantha, his expression resolute. We need to inform the authorities and bring in external cybersecurity experts. This is beyond our scope now. Samantha nodded, her heart heavy. The once reassuring hum of the servers now seemed like a sinister lullaby, and the shadows in the room felt darker than before. The Internet Archive, a beacon of knowledge and preservation, was now a battleground for something far more dangerous. As they began to make the necessary calls and notifications, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. The archive's breach was just the first chapter of a much darker story. And in the quiet depths of the archive, the shadows seemed to stir, whispering of secrets long buried. The night wore on, and the once orderly hum of the server room now felt like a dissonant symphony of impending doom. Samantha and Jonathan had been working for hours, analyzing logs and initiating protocols to secure the compromised node. The gravity of the situation weighed heavily on their shoulders. Jonathan had made the necessary calls to external cybersecurity experts, and they promised to send a team over as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Samantha continued to monitor the systems, her eyes red and tired from the strain. The anomaly they detected had already cast a long shadow over the Internet Archive, but now it was clear the situation was more dire than they initially thought. Jonathan leaned over Samantha's shoulder, scrutinizing the altered manuscript. These changes, they're too precise to be random. Whoever did this knew exactly what they were looking for. Samantha nodded, her brow furrowed. But why this manuscript? What's the significance? Jonathan's gaze was intense. I don't know yet, but it's clear that we're dealing with someone who has a specific agenda. We need to understand their motives. As they continued their investigation, the room seemed to grow colder. Samantha rubbed her arms to stave off the chill, but the sensation wasn't just physical. It was as if the very air around them had become thick with an unsettling presence. The flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows, and every creak of the building felt magnified. An alert flashed on Samantha's screen. A new access request had been made to another critical part of the archive. Her heart skipped a beat as she saw the familiar, unsettling IP address. Jonathan, we have another breach attempt, she said, her voice taut with anxiety. Jonathan's expression darkened. Let's lock it down before they get through. They swiftly initiated another lockdown, isolating the affected section of the archive. As they did, Samantha couldn't help but feel that they were playing a game of cat and mouse. Each lockdown, each containment effort seemed to be met with renewed attempts to breach their defenses. Hours passed, and the cybersecurity team arrived. They were a group of sharp-eyed professionals, equipped with advanced tools and a no-nonsense attitude. Led by a seasoned expert named Erica Martin, they quickly took over the investigation, their presence adding a sense of urgency to the atmosphere. Erica examined the compromised nodes with a mix of skepticism and determination. From what I'm seeing, this isn't just a simple hack. The attacker is using sophisticated methods to cover their tracks. Jonathan nodded. We suspected as much. The altered manuscript was just the beginning. Erica's gaze was intense as she began her own analysis. We'll need to perform a full forensic investigation. It'll take time, but we need to determine the extent of the breach and how deeply it goes. Samantha tried to focus on her tasks, but the sense of unease continued to gnaw at her. The archive, once a place of historical preservation and knowledge, now felt like a haunted vault where every document was a potential trap. As dawn approached, the initial chaos of the breach seemed to settle into a grim routine. The cybersecurity team worked tirelessly, their efforts a stark contrast to the silence that had descended over the building. The tension was palpable, and Samantha found herself haunted by the implications of what they were uncovering. Jonathan joined Samantha at a small conference table, their faces etched with exhaustion. "How are you holding up?" he asked. Samantha forced a weary smile. "I'm managing, but I can't shake the feeling that we're missing something important." Jonathan's eyes were troubled. I share your concern. We've contained the immediate threats, but the altered manuscript suggests that this attack is more than just data theft. It's a deliberate act to manipulate history. As if on cue, Erica approached with a grim expression. We've uncovered something alarming. It seems that the intruders weren't just accessing files. They were also planting malicious code designed to alter or delete information. Samantha's heart sank. So they're actively tampering with the data. Erica nodded. Yes, it's a sophisticated attack aimed at rewriting history. We need to act quickly to preserve the integrity of the remaining archives. Jonathan's face was set in determination. What do we need to do? Erica's voice was steady but urgent. We need to initiate a comprehensive data integrity check across all nodes. We'll also need to enhance our security protocols and track the origins of the malicious code. The team sprang into action, their focus shifting to preserving what remained of the archive's integrity. The sense of urgency was palpable as they worked to repair the damage and prevent further alterations. Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that there was something deeply wrong about the situation. The breach was more than just a technical challenge. It was a profound threat to the collective memory of humanity. The idea that someone could rewrite history, erase truths, and manipulate information was deeply unsettling. As the sun began to rise over San Francisco, the first light of dawn brought a semblance of hope, but the weight of the night's events lingered. The Internet Archive was under siege, and the stakes had never been higher. In the midst of their efforts, Samantha noticed something peculiar on one of the monitoring screens. A small, unmarked file had appeared in a restricted directory, one that had not been accessed or altered by their team. It was labeled only as untitled. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as she hesitated. The file was out of place, and a sense of foreboding surrounded it. With Jonathan and Erica preoccupied with their tasks, Samantha decided to investigate the file on her own. As she opened the file, a chilling message appeared on the screen. "You're too late. The past is already rewritten. Soon, the truth will be lost forever." A shiver ran down Samantha's spine as she stared at the ominous words. The file was a taunting reminder that the attack was not just a technical breach, but a deliberate assault on the very fabric of reality. As she processed the message, the room seemed to grow colder once more. The sense of dread was palpable, and Samantha realized that they were not just fighting against an intruder, they were grappling with an insidious force that sought to erase the past itself. With renewed determination, Samantha knew that they had to uncover the full extent of the breach and prevent any more tampering. The Internet Archive was not just a repository of data, it was a bastion of human history, and it was under threat from an enemy that sought to rewrite its legacy. As the sun continued to rise, Samantha and her team braced themselves for the challenges ahead. The battle for the archive was far from over, and the true extent of the danger they faced was only beginning to reveal itself. The sun climbed higher, casting a weak light through the narrow windows of the Internet Archive's basement. The once bustling server room was now a fortress of focus and tension, filled with the low hum of machines and the clacking of keyboards. Samantha's heart was heavy with the knowledge that the intruder was not just an ordinary hacker, but someone with a more sinister goal: to distort history itself. Jonathan and Erica were deep in discussion, their faces illuminated by the glow of their screens. Samantha, still haunted by the ominous message in the mysterious file, decided to take a closer look at the file's origins. The message had hinted at something far more nefarious than a simple breach. She knew she needed to understand the source of the threat. Samantha started by tracing the file's metadata and access logs, but the data appeared tampered with. Most of the usual tracking information was missing or altered. It was clear that whoever was behind this had taken great pains to cover their tracks. As she dug deeper, Samantha noticed something even more troubling. The code within the mysterious file seemed to be a sophisticated algorithm, one designed not just to manipulate data, but to embed itself within the archive's core systems. It was as if the file was a key, capable of unlocking and altering other data in hidden ways. "Jonathan, Erica, come take a look at this," Samantha called out, her voice tinged with urgency. Jonathan and Erica joined her at the workstation, peering at the screen. Erica's expression hardened as she scrutinized the code. "This is more than just a virus or malware. It's a highly advanced piece of code, almost like a digital parasite." Jonathan frowned. "A parasite? Explain." Erica continued. "The code appears to be designed to infiltrate and integrate with other systems. It could potentially spread to other parts of the archive, altering or deleting information as it goes. If it's left unchecked, it could compromise the entire archive." Samantha's pulse quickened. "And the message? The past is already rewritten. It implies that they've already begun their work." Jonathan nodded grimly. "We need to contain this immediately and isolate all potentially infected systems. We can't let it spread any further." The team set to work, initiating emergency containment protocols. They isolated critical systems and began running scans to identify any other potential infections. The air was thick with tension, each team member acutely aware that the archive's future, and the integrity of countless historical records, was at stake. While the containment efforts were underway, Samantha noticed something strange in the network traffic. It was as if the data streams were behaving erratically, almost as if someone or something was trying to manipulate or disrupt their efforts. "Jonathan, I'm seeing unusual traffic patterns," Samantha reported. Jonathan looked at her screen, his eyes narrowing. "It looks like someone is actively trying to interfere with our containment efforts. They're not just passive attackers, they're engaged in a direct sabotage." Erica's face tightened. "We need to be careful. If they're trying to interfere, they may have other plans or traps set up." As they continued their efforts, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, monitored by an unseen presence. The lights in the server room flickered occasionally, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The sensation was unsettling, as though the archive itself was aware of the threat and reacting to it. Late into the afternoon, a breakthrough came. Erica's team identified a pattern in the malware's behavior. It seemed to be focused on specific types of documents, historical records, rare manuscripts, and sensitive cultural artifacts. Why these documents? Samantha wondered aloud. What's so important about them? Jonathan's face was etched with concern. These documents could contain information that challenges certain narratives or contains truths that someone wants to suppress. If the attackers are targeting them specifically, they might be trying to control or manipulate historical narratives. Erica's eyes widened. If they've succeeded in altering or deleting these records, they could rewrite history in a way that serves their own agenda. With this new understanding, the team shifted their focus. They began to prioritize the most vulnerable documents and work to verify their integrity. It was an exhausting and meticulous process, but it was crucial to ensure that the core of the archive remained intact. As night fell, the atmosphere in the server room grew even more tense. The flickering lights and the incessant hum of machines created an almost oppressive atmosphere. Samantha was starting to feel like she was in a race against time, a race to protect not just data, but the very essence of human history. Suddenly, Samantha's monitor flashed a new alert. Another file had been altered, and this time, it was not just a minor change. The file had been completely rewritten. Jonathan and Erica rushed over to her workstation. The altered file was a well-known historical document, a primary source from a pivotal moment in history. The changes were not just cosmetic. They fundamentally altered the document's content. "This is bad," Jonathan said, his voice strained. "If this alteration goes undetected, it could lead to a false historical narrative being accepted as truth." Erica was already working on identifying the source of the alteration. "We need to reverse this change and restore the original document from backups. We also need to track down how this was done and prevent further damage." Samantha's fingers flew over the keyboard as she worked to restore the document from the most recent backup. Her heart pounded with every keystroke, knowing that the stakes were higher than ever. The archive's integrity was in jeopardy, and every minute counted. As the team worked through the night, the sense of urgency was palpable. The intruders were not just trying to breach the archive. They were engaged in a calculated and dangerous effort to rewrite history itself. Samantha felt a growing sense of unease as she worked. The mysterious file, the unusual traffic patterns, and the altered documents all pointed to a malevolent force with a clear agenda. The Internet Archive was not just a target, it was a battleground for control over historical truth. By the time dawn broke, the immediate threats had been contained, but the damage done was significant. The archive had been compromised in ways that would take weeks, if not months, to fully assess and repair. Jonathan, Erica, and Samantha gathered for a brief respite. The weight of their task was evident in their weary faces. "We've contained the immediate threats and restored some of the critical documents," Jonathan said, his voice tired but determined. "But we still don't fully understand who's behind this or what their ultimate goal is." Erica nodded. "And until we do, we have to remain vigilant. The attackers are likely to strike again or attempt other forms of sabotage." Samantha looked around at her colleagues, the gravity of their situation sinking in. The Internet Archive had been tested in ways it had never been before, and the true nature of the threat was still emerging. As the team prepared to continue their work, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that the worst was yet to come. The battle for the archive was far from over, and the forces behind the attack were far more sinister than anyone had anticipated. In the shadowy recesses of the archive, the digital parasites continued their work, silently and insidiously altering the past. The archive's defenders were locked in a struggle not just to restore what was lost, but to prevent a new and dangerous reality from taking shape. The Internet Archive was a hive of activity, its usual calm replaced by a frenzied urgency. Samantha, Jonathan, and Erica had been working around the clock to mitigate the damage caused by the recent breach. The gravity of their situation was becoming clearer. The attackers were not merely seeking to pilfer data, they were on a mission to rewrite history itself. Weeks passed as the team struggled to repair and restore the corrupted files. Each day brought new challenges, new breaches to contain, and more altered documents to recover. Despite their best efforts, the sense of unease never fully dissipated. It was clear that their adversaries had a sophisticated understanding of both technology and history. One evening, as Samantha reviewed a newly restored manuscript, she noticed something alarming. The metadata on several recovered documents had been tampered with again. The changes were subtle but indicated that someone or something had been continuously altering the files from within their own system. Her heart raced. Could it be that the attackers had managed to implant a persistent threat that evaded their detection? She called Jonathan and Erica over. "We've got another issue. It looks like someone might still be inside our system, making changes." Jonathan's face tightened with concern. "Are you sure?" Samantha nodded. "I'm seeing altered metadata and recent access logs that don't match our activity." Erica's eyes narrowed. "We need to run a full system scan, but more importantly, we need to investigate this from a different angle. We could be dealing with a hidden layer of the attack." The team initiated a comprehensive scan of their network, using every tool at their disposal. As they worked, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The server room, once a place of order and purpose, now felt like a stage set for something sinister. Late that night, as Samantha was poring over the scan results, a new alert popped up on her screen. It was a message from an anonymous source. "The past is never truly gone, it waits for those who seek to reclaim it." The message was unsettling. The attackers had left behind a taunting reminder of their intent. Samantha knew they had to act quickly to prevent further tampering. As the team gathered to discuss their next steps, Erica made a startling revelation. "I've traced some of the changes back to a shadowy organization, a group dedicated to manipulating historical records to fit certain narratives. They've been working in the shadows, and they're skilled at covering their tracks." Jonathan's face was grim. "If they've been doing this for a long time, we might be facing an ongoing battle. We need to alert the authorities and bring in experts who specialize in historical data preservation." Samantha felt a pang of frustration. "But how can we protect the integrity of the archive while we wait for external help? The damage could be irreparable." Erica nodded. "We need to secure the remaining unaltered documents and create a backup plan to safeguard the rest of the archive." With renewed determination, the team worked tirelessly to secure the remaining documents and enhance their security measures. Despite their best efforts, the shadow of the attackers loomed large. The sense of urgency was palpable, and each passing day seemed to reveal new layers of the conspiracy. As they neared the end of their immediate containment efforts, the team took a moment to reflect on their progress. The Internet Archive had been significantly impacted, but they had managed to recover and secure many critical documents. However, the shadow of the attack remained, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked in the digital age. One evening, as Samantha walked through the now quiet server room, she felt a strange sense of closure. The servers were humming softly, the lights casting long shadows on the walls. The archive was not the same as it had been before the attack, but it was still standing, a testament to the resilience of those who had fought to protect it. Jonathan and Erica joined her, their expressions weary but resolute. "We've done everything we can for now," Jonathan said. "The archive is secure, but the threat remains." Erica nodded. "We've restored a lot, but the shadow of the attackers still lingers. We'll need to remain vigilant and continue our efforts to uncover their true motives." Samantha glanced at the restored manuscripts and historical documents. Despite the damage, the archive still held a wealth of knowledge and history. The attackers had sought to rewrite the past, but the integrity of the archive remained a beacon of truth. As the team prepared to hand over their findings to the authorities and external experts, Samantha took one last look at the server room. The sense of dread had lessened, but the battle was far from over. The attackers had shown that they were willing to go to great lengths to control historical narratives, and their shadowy presence had left a lasting impact. The Internet Archive stood as a symbol of human knowledge and resilience, a fortress against those who would seek to distort the truth. The breach had tested its defenses and challenged its mission, but it had also revealed the strength of those who fought to protect it. As Samantha walked away from the server room, she felt a sense of determination. The Internet Archive's battle was not over, but its defenders had proven their commitment to preserving history and truth. In the face of darkness, they had stood firm, and the archive would continue to stand as a testament to the enduring power of knowledge. The shadows of the past had been confronted, and though the threat remained, the light of truth shone brightly in the heart of the Internet Archive.